Fool Around with the Future. That show debuted in 1967. All right, let's come in with the Fox 5 Good Day New York co-host Rosanna Scotto, along with Simplify Asset Management, their chief strategist Mike Green. Rosanna, I'm going to start with you, right? I mean, it did seem like something was different about then. Even though they say we're wealthier now, it doesn't feel like we were as wealthy as we were in 1967.
Well, first of all, everything feels like it's so much more expensive. An Uber ride is more than it was 2 years ago. Of course, you go to the grocery store, more than it was a year or two ago. Although under President Biden, the eggs got very, very high. It's come down a little bit, but still has not gone down to the prices that we're kind of accustomed to. And I have to say, it's so much more expensive for young people to
get to the young people in a moment, though. Yeah. But I want to focus on this for a second, because, Mike, whenever you see a chart on social media you don't like, you go at it. Now, there's some people have some problems with this. They're saying, okay, in 1967, for instance, about 40% of women worked. Now that number's around 60%. So households are earning more, but everyone's working, and that's not necessarily prosperity.
No, and I think that's really the challenge, is that quote-unquote good life in that Q3, Q4 sort of income strata where you're making between $50,000 and $100,000 a year really feels like not such a good life for people. And so increasingly they're forced to say, I'm not sure this is worth the effort.
Yeah. Speaking of being worth the effort, one of the biggest issues now, young folks coming out of college, young people in general, they don't have a job. Some are blaming AI. I've heard people blame the immigration issue. Rosanna, you know about this firsthand, right? What's going on?
I have children who are in the job market. Yeah. They're in their early 30s. It's not easy. Part of it is, after COVID, a lot of these young kids got used to working remotely. Getting them back out of the house and into the office has been quite the feat. Now I think they're kind of getting their feet wet again, coming back into the office. But the money's not that great that's being offered. And so there's no incentive for them to come back.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure I agree with that aspect of it. I think that young people have always wanted to go back into the office. They've always wanted to have the opportunity to work with older people who they can learn from, right? The fact that they were deprived of that for a number of years, I think, has put many of them behind the schedule in terms of their development. The question on AI is it just creates uncertainty. Why would I hire somebody, incur $30,000 worth of health insurance costs as an employer, all the training associated with it, if next year there's going to be an LLM solution that allows me not to hire that person? And that's really, I think, what we're seeing more than anything else is just a lack of hiring.
I read an article, though, that says a lot of companies that have started using AI calling people back into the labor force. I mean, that would be a good sign.
I have to say, a friend of mine's son is in the tech business, and he was doing phenomenal. He could have gotten a different job at better pay every other month. But all of a sudden, he's feeling the effects of AI, and he's sitting on the sidelines right now, waiting to get back into the workforce. So I do think AI is playing a big part in certain jobs.
So I'm going to kind of stick with the young folks here. And the question is, did the business and the Federal Reserve kind of set them up? And this is what I mean. I'm going to show a flash. This is an article that was put out in 2022. As the Fed started to jack up rates, the gist of it was that it was an intermillennial lifestyle because it was being subsidized by easy money, zero interest rates. And so the Ubers of the world and all these other folks, you can get an app and you didn't pay anything, right? I'm getting this app that's sending stuff to my house almost free. All of a sudden, money wasn't free. And we're going to put a chart of Uber up here in a moment, right? Uber did well, but Mike, I mean, were they set up? I mean, how much of what's happening right now, particularly for younger folks, is the fault of the Federal Reserve or just restrictive policy?
I got to be honest with you, I don't blame the Federal Reserve nearly as much as I blame our failure to enforce antitrust behavior. The simple reality is, you showed a chart of rising Uber stock price. We are all familiar with rising Uber prices. Compensation to drivers is not rising. And so what's actually happening is just the power
That's
of
a setup.
Uber.
I remember buses, and when they first had Ubers, buses like, you want to make $100,000 a year, right? If you're driving a taxi, call this up. And it was the bait and switch, I think.
And even with tipping, some of the Uber drivers say they don't receive the tips. There's been a lot of back and forth with how they're compensated. But I will say, they kind of sucked us into the Uber world. It was cheaper than taking a taxi in New York City. And now, you know what? It's probably a lot more.
Though. I mean, listen, I have a lot of of sympathy for young folks, but I say, you know, let me check out your phone, because we get rid of the Uber account, get rid of the Grubhub thing, get rid of most of these apps, and you might have a few extra bucks that you can put away, put in the market, or put on whatever you want to do with it. But some of this is like some sacrifice. I don't know. There's got to be some sacrifice here.
Well, I think there definitely has to be sacrifice. The question is, who bears it the most? And right now, the young people are bearing it. Part of the challenge is, you highlighted the chart of Uber, right? That is the wealth of their parents. And so their parents are very, very resistant to actions that could damage the value of Uber or other components. We're
seeing a war right now, I think, at the ballot box, because the boomers have all the money and now the young folks have the numbers. And that's why I think we're going to have more Mom Donnies out there. I'm afraid of it. I want to give you props. I saw this piece you did in Hedgeye. And this Pandora's Ledger, Mispriced Hope. And really, the ladder of mobility is all these areas have started to deteriorate. What's the commonality here? You know, what's going on?
Well, this is the point that I was emphasizing in terms of people's inability to transit across our socioeconomic spectrum to move up from the lower end into the higher end is really deteriorated. So if we go back to 1970, there was about a 12% chance that somebody born in the poorest quintile of our economy could make it all the way to the very top. And if they didn't, that Q2, Q3, Q4, those middle quintiles were actually a really attractive life in which they could guarantee a better outcome for their children. That's gone. And that's really the problem. We see this young generation starting out with nothing and saying, I got to get rich immediately. I'm going to gamble on crypto. I'm going to gamble itself, right? I'm going to engage in all sorts of behaviors, trying to win a lottery early in life.
It did feel like that was the unstated promise of being born in America, that you would do better than your parents. Do you think it's gone forever?
I hope not. I mean, my kids and I talk about it all the time. But, you know, at one point, like, everybody wanted to be an influencer. They thought that was the get-rich-quick scheme. And now I think they realize that everybody's an influencer and they're sharing the same pot. So there's not that much mobility in that.
Rosanna, let me ask you about I have a great table. We'll put it up here. Higher earning women are more likely to marry. Before, they said that one of the key formulas for getting wealthy in this country was getting married, having a family, family formation. Is that still plausible?
Well, it depends on who you talk to, but I think a lot of women who are in the workforce, they want to get stable. They want to make their career. They want to know where they're going before they fall in love and start a family. I mean, starting a family, years ago, that would just go with getting married. Now they're worrying about, okay, am I at the right part in my career to have a child? There's much more intellectualizing right now.
Yeah, see, I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't get married young and have a kid young. My daughter, having a young daughter, and I was cold calling. I mean, people slamming the phone at me left and right. Hi, this is Charles Payne. Hi, this is Charles Payne. I got me until 10 o'clock at night. They're slamming the phones on me, but I got to do it for my daughter. I couldn't have made it without having the kid first and getting married first.
Well, I feel very similarly. I made an intentional choice to be a relatively young father, and kids have been by far the best thing that has ever happened to me in my life. Those choices, though, when we highlight that, you know, more successful women are the ones that are getting married, part of that is actually just the falling off of the attractiveness of men in that time period. If you don't succeed in your 20s...
Wait a minute, say that again?
Oh, wait a second,
Part of that is just the attractiveness of men in their 20s. If they do not make the career choices that put themselves in a position at 29 or 30 to be stable, I can understand why the women are not...
Look like you're agreeing a little bit with that.
Well, you know, Mike definitely has a great point there, but I do think that women kind of really look inward, and they're saying, am I happy with how I am in the world right now? Have I achieved, am I on the right path to where I want to go with my career? Then they can kind of relax and get married and have kids.
Got less than a minute to go. I saw this thing in The Economist. It says that around the world, and I guess that includes America, believe it or not, people are less worried, sad, and angry than they have been a couple of years ago, and feel more rested, laughing more, and enjoying life more. Maybe we're being too pessimistic.
I'm going to very quickly point out that we have to be very careful in what our reference period is. So a couple of years ago, we were locked up. I'd have to stand 6 feet away from you and wear a mask.
Good point.
So
good point.
It's very hard to know exactly what that reference point is.
All right. Let's leave it there. Rosanna, Mike, that was great. Hope you come back. We'll tackle some more of life's tough challenges. Appreciate it.